The Utah offense has been good, but no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They absolutely have to get better.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. It's your first time tuning into our show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for this week's highlight, moving the game forward. Mazda, move and be moved. My name is JT Wizard. Still excited to have on friend of the show, Josh Furlong of KSL.com. He is a writer as well for the AP poll. So Josh is a busy man, always great whenever we get him to come on. We're going to talk some men's basketball at the very end of the show, barely over a month away from the start of the season. Seems crazy. Some of the defensive injuries that Utah's suffering and how they can kind of continue to, if they can sustain their success moving forward. But first, I want to start with this offense, Josh, because this is an offense that has put up points and been productive, but there's no question about it. They need to get the deep passing game going. And it just hasn't happened. It's kind of funny when you look at like the receiving yardage totals on the year. Ryan Davis, Dallin Bentley, awesome. No one else, no other receiver has over 100 yards on the season. Next closest is Tobias Merriweather, who a lot of us thought coming into the year maybe would be that leading receiver for Utah. And it just hasn't materialized. I still think this deep passing game can work. Merriweather and especially Dampier have been close on connecting on some big plays, but it just hasn't worked so far. I think it can get there. Do you think it can get there? And what have you made of the explosive offense so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think this offense is working, right? And I think by and large, that's the point. Yeah, you can nitpick and you can kind of go into this and say, oh, they need more deep passing, and I don't disagree. But at the same time, as long as the defense is giving you what you want, and that could be a run game, it could be the short to intermediate routes, if those are developed, Utah's going to be fine, right? And I think it's more or less just being diverse. You can't go into this thinking that you can do the same thing and try to beat teams. Some teams you can, right? Like these lower level teams, maybe you have a good shot. But I think when you're looking at how Utah is composed, they need to be dynamic. And so to do that, yes, you need to establish the run. And they're always going to do that, whether it be Devon Dampier, their 2-star running backs, whomever else that they have utilized in that system, the gadget plays, as Kyle Whittingham calls it. You've got to be able to develop that. And that's kind of your home base. But as we saw against Texas Tech, you can't just establish that and think that that can be the only thing, right? You've got to be able to have a little bit more down the field to be able to stretch that defense. If they can just load that box and be closer and closer and closer to the line, it gets so much more compacted. It gets so much tighter, and it becomes difficult for Utah to move the ball. And so you saw that a lot last year with Isaac Wilson running it. They knew that they could stack the box. They knew that he wasn't going to beat them over the top all the time. It's not to say that he couldn't, but I think near the end of the season, he started rushing and things got a little different. But as you relax that defense and force them to be a little bit more honest, respect a little bit, that's going to change it. So whether that's 20 yards down the field or 15 or 10, I don't think it fully matters, quite honestly. I think last week what you saw with West Virginia is probably a key element in where they can go. You can have a little bit of the deep passing, but it doesn't have to be 20 times a game, right? You can sprinkle in 5 times deep passing. You can get a much more intermediates. It's really just kind of mixing it up and being diverse.
Yeah, and just making it a threat. I mean, that was the problem against Tech, right? There were plays I'd stop and rewind the game back. I'm like, why didn't that running play work? And I'm like, the offensive lineman's doing their job. Safety, flying down the box because they don't respect the ability to separate or Dampier's ability to make the plays downfield. And when you're looking at, okay, why hasn't this offense been more explosive? I do think it's on a little bit of everyone, right? Whether it is your top outside receivers in a Larry Simmons, Tobias Merriweather, they did a live post spring. So that's something that's a little tough. You have to work those guys into the system. You've seen whether it's, hey, not on the same page with the route, guys not always getting that separation. Devon Dampier needing to be more accurate as well, too. Maybe some even on Jason Beck. I do feel like it's an area where, to me, when you're like, why isn't the deep passing attack working? Where boom, we're just seeing bombs all over the field. Not just because this isn't that offense's nature. I do think it's something where I think everyone needs to be a little bit better, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean that's any game, right? Like it doesn't matter if it's the passing or the running. There's always something you can critique, right? And I think the tough thing for Utah is we still don't really know what this team is capable of, right? Like I think we do in the sense that they're destroying bad teams, and that's what good teams do. So yeah, exactly. So like this is a good team. Like we can stand to that point. Like bad teams, they don't necessarily blow out bad teams. And so
Mhm.
when we're looking at this, we're putting a ton of stock into that Texas Tech game. And it's a lot more nuanced than a lot of people want to expect. And don't get me wrong, like Utah's looking at that game knowing there's so many things that they have to be better. The game plan changed, they didn't utilize it the way that they needed to. There was things that worked in that game that they never went back to. I mean, you look at that touchdown pass to Jackson Benny that was called back for an ineligible receiver downfield. They didn't ever go back to that kind of stuff. And so, like, there's things that you can go back to. But at the same time, we're looking at a Devon Dampier who wasn't with the team essentially for the entire week in terms of putting the reps in, putting the practice in, and we're evaluating that team based on that performance. When in reality, that entire game was locked up 3-0, 10-0 for most of that game until late when Texas Tech took over. And you can't ignore that, right? Like Texas Tech did its job and they're good. Don't get me wrong, but I think we're evaluating a ton on a team that we still don't know a ton about. But at the same time, I don't think they're as bad as maybe many think that they could be, because I think Dampier has been effective. He's done really well. When you give him time and get him into the system and has a full week of practice, I think what you saw against West Virginia, who still isn't a trash defense,
Mhm.
they did their job.
Yeah, I'm really curious this Friday to see. I don't think that BYU offense is amazing. True freshman quarterback trying to figure things out. How is West Virginia going to bounce back on what is a slightly shorter week for them having the Friday game instead of a Saturday? So I think that is interesting there. But I really do. I mean, Josh, you're an AP voter. We mentioned that off the start too. So you evaluate this Texas Tech team and everyone else. I still go back to that game and I say it was more good Texas Tech than bad Utah. Both things can be true when you only put up 10 points, right? But I came away so impressed with Tech's D-line. To me, that's a top 10 team in the country. And I feel like, as you kind of mentioned too, the performance against West Virginia that Utah has makes me think, oh yeah, that is a good Utah team. That's one of the, I would say, 4 best teams in the Big 12. If you want to say 6 best in Utah right now, that's fine. I just feel like they played what is clearly the best team in the Big 12 right now to me. Do you view Tech in that regard?
Yeah, and I think we're, in that same vein, Utah's much closer than many would like to expect. The
Mhm.
difference is Texas Tech put it all together, right?
Yeah.
And when you're coming into a road environment and everybody can look in that and say, "Oh, they had this terrible schedule in non-conference play," and they did. They came in there with a much better game plan and they were aggressive. And so when there's things where, maybe Utah's not playing at its best, or when things are kind of locked up, that team is generally 9 times out of 10 going to win because they have the momentum. They're the ones being aggressive. They're the ones kind of putting Utah on its heels and forcing them to make decisions based off of what Tech's doing. Conversely, had Utah done that, I think you maybe would have seen a different part of that game. But this Texas Tech team is stacked, right? They've got a good offense, they've got a good defense. With that said, I'm really curious to see how Tech continues, right? They haven't really faced adversity yet. What's going to happen when a team, gets them down by 2 scores because something happens, maybe they turn it over or fumble or whatever that may be? Where does this team go when there's adversity? I don't doubt that they can be a top 10 team, right? Like right now, I have them in my top 10 in the AP top 25. This is a team that is solid. And as long as they continue to remain solid and can, buy into each other and not just kind of being there, that's going to work. I think the talk about the money, that goes out the window when you start playing the season, right?
Yeah.
Once you start playing in the season, then it's on coaching, then it's on development, then it's on players, and that's where we're at with Tech. So far, they've been there, right? They've delivered the coaching. You have to put all those together. Everybody looks at Kobe and Shaq and all those guys and say, how did Phil Johnson keep them together? He was a great coach that kept those egos in check. That's where we need to see if Joey McGuire can do that with Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Can he keep those egos in check? Can he say, yes, we're going to pay you handsomely, but we're going to do it as a team element and continue? If that's where it is, then this Tech team 100% is a Big 12 contender, and if not the favorite to win it. So, we'll see what happens when they face adversity. They're going to face it. You don't go in a whole season without facing adversity. And if they don't, luck was on their side, and kudos to them.
Yeah, kudos to them. And you mentioned one of the most important things, too, you have to do from a coaching perspective is the growth and development you still have within your team. Utah has been very good at developing their players. That's going to have to continue to be the case to overcome some of these injuries on defense. What are we talking about? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if yours wins. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience even better. And we have games constantly. I mean, there's Thursday night college football and NFL action, Friday college football. Of course, Saturday is a loaded slate. Even when Utah doesn't play this week, there are tons of great games going on across the country. Alabama, Vandy, anyone? Still can't believe that's the level of game it is, but that's where we're at in 2025. And then on Sunday, Monday too, there's games almost every day. NBA season around the corner. Baseball playoffs about to begin. FanDuel has you covered. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started with FanDuel Sportsbook. Today's show also brought to you by Square. Your favorite neighborhood sports run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When a neighborhood business thrives, the whole neighborhood thrives. I mean, if you're talking about a place like Utah, right? It was great to see a couple places spotlighted on Big Noon Kickoff Show. And there's just so many places that make Salt Lake City or wherever you're listening to this unique that are in your neighborhood. And when we show up as a community, it can mean big business for local business owners. Money spent in the neighborhood stays in the neighborhood. Square is proud to partner with more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. Can you go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege? That's all caps, no spaces, Locked On College to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, we'll see you in the neighborhood. Josh, we had a conversation at Big 12 Media Day about like potential question marks with this Utah team. Some question marks. How about the tight end position? Oh my gosh. How about the answers that Utah's provided there? But there's other positions that even throughout the year, right, you're going to have more questions pop up. One of those being defensive tackle. I think the Utah defensive tackles have done their job pretty well overall. Jonah Lae has been able to step up. Vaimahi Vakalaki. But the problem is Vaimahi Vakalaki have both been battling injuries so far this season. And we'll wait and see what their availability is moving forward. But Josh, that is a concerning position for me when you rely so heavily on your defensive tackles to be able to stop the run, eat up those double teams, and free up what I think are some really nice linebackers this year. Landon Barton, Jonathan Hall, even some other guys have stepped up and been able to produce for this Utah team. If Utah does lose some of those defensive tackles and they have to lean so heavily on freshmen, that is a potential concern I have.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's a major concern in my opinion. I mean, I think what Utah's already done is they've been able to handle that pretty well. Yes, you've had some players come in and out, right? Dallas Vakalahi's kind of been out almost all the season. Got injured in the UCLA game, came back the last little bit and has done well, but got injured again in the West Virginia game. Aliki Vamahi's always been battling injury his entire time here at Utah. But I think you have guys in that room that are stepping up. Now, is it perfect? No, right? Like, and I think that's where Utah's going to continue to grow. But I don't know that you've seen like a major drop off when any of these players go out, at least in that position, right?
Yeah.
There's things that you have to work on, right? That their job impacts a lot of what is going on behind them. And so if there's missed tackles or there's missed things that going on, you know, some of that is going to be on that line to be able to make sure that they don't have to be in that position. And so, you know, I think you're still going to see a defensive tackle room that's going to be working. They're going to be doing really well. But at the same time, I don't know that this is a position group that I'm more worried about. I think, in my opinion, the safety position group is probably where I'd focus the most. You've already lost Rabbit Evans for the season. That, you know, he hadn't really played at all this year except for 6 snaps. And then you just lost Nate Ritchie, who I'm assuming is going to be a season-ending injury just based on what I saw on the field. We haven't gotten that official from Kyle Whittingham, but you've got 2 starting caliber safeties that are essentially out, and now you're left with Te'o Johnson, who has been solid mostly. There's still some things that he needs to clean up, and I think it's mostly because he's been put in a lot of different positions that he's not necessarily playing his natural spot. But you've got him who's still a vet that can get in there, and now Utah's going to be relying a ton on Nate Tillman, a freshman coming in. You know, this is a guy that you can clearly see he's got the prototypical body for a safety. It's just a matter of being able to get him reps. And I think There's a benefit in the sense that they got to play him essentially the entire game against West Virginia. Going into this Arizona State game, you've got tape now. You've got something to look at and say, hey, here's how you can take this and improve it to this. Whereas before, had Nate Ritchie gotten injured in, let's say, the Arizona State game, then that becomes much more of a concern. So, injuries are definitely, one of those things that are tough. I would say the secondary is banged up the most, and that's where Utah has to be concerned. But anywhere, when you have to start relying more on your depth, it's not necessarily pray and hope that it comes together, but I think it's one of those things where you have to test that depth and see how it works. And right now, at least in defensive tackle, they've been able to do pretty well in being able to sustain what they've been wanting to do there.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm just curious to see if that will hold up against. And I don't think the offensive lines in the Big 12, Utah is the best one. I'd go Tech probably second best right now, I'd say. But we'll see. Arizona State, obviously the BYU game will be a physical test too. How do those freshman defensive tackles against some of the best ones, how are they able to hold up if Utah needs to use them a lot? But Josh, I was going to go to the safeties next because you're absolutely right. That is a massive thing. I mean, I was so high on Rabbit Evans coming in this year. I thought he was going to have a special year, and I'm glad he has another year to come back because I do think he's capable of having just a monster season. But with Jackson Benny being one of the other most pleasant surprises, and then he gets hurt in the last game, and that's another one where, like, hey, let's wait and see what the severity of his injury will be. But that's a lot on a freshman safety at Tillman. You are absolutely right. And Utah asked a lot of their corners too, Josh, and that'll be something I'm also interested to see. They held up well against Morton and Tech. Let's not forget, if it wasn't for that big play on the very first drive, which was, a borderline, hey, was that a pick play blocking downfield? If it wasn't for that, maybe that's even a 3-3 game early on too. Although at the same time, Dylan Curtis got an extra chance because the guy ran into him. So we could do the if-ands game all day. But this Utah team, the defense has stepped up, but they ask a lot of their secondary. I am curious to see how the cornerbacks, especially with how much, Utah just sends the farm after people. I mean, zero blitz like crazy. So it's just those guys on an island out there. I'm curious to see if they can continue to hold up. I feel like this unit is good. Honestly, coming into the year, I said there'd be a slight drop off. I could still see that being the case, although John Henry Daly is making me reconsider that with what a tear he's been off the edge. But do you expect this defense to at all maybe take a step back from the point they've been, or do you think they'll be able to maintain what's been a really strong start?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be okay. I mean, I think there's still some key tests that they have to face, namely being Arizona State, where you've got Sam Levitt, who is a true dual threat quarterback who obviously runs the ball a ton, but he's more than capable as a passer. They also have Jordan Tyson, who is really solid, and if you don't defend him the right way, you're toast. So, I think that's going to be another test that we're going to see. But Morgan Scalley continually gets the best out of his defense the longer the season goes on. And I don't feel that Utah's necessarily started at a bad point, right? Is it to the levels of a 2019 type defense or maybe even some that's a little bit more recent? No, not at least starting out. But I think given where they're at and kind of the players in their different positions and maybe the depth that they're in, this is a team that remains solid, right? They're still going to be one of the best defenses in the Big 12. They still rank really highly in the entire in the country. This is a team that continues to grow under Morgan Scalley because the more tape that they get in there, the more that they can press these guys. But in that secondary room, you mentioned it. This is where the test is really going to come. But I think with that, Jackson Benny most likely is going to play. I believe his injury is of the such that he's going to be fine. But then you're going to have Smith Snowden kind of utilized a lot more. Maybe his experiment on the offensive side of the ball shortens or is completely gone because they need him more in star coverage, that kind of stuff. But I think, you've got a team that for the most part has remained well in coverage. Outside of those last 10 minutes of the game against Texas Tech, Utah did its part, right? The entire third quarter was a punt from both teams. Like this wasn't one of those things where it was just Utah was getting burned by their receivers at every moment, right? There's still things that they have to do. They have to have better eyes. They have to be able to be good in coverage. And, whether it's a design situation where they just get their hands up on the, as they're defending a guy or turning their body to see the ball, they've got to get better at those. But for the most part, up until this point in the season, they've been great in coverage, right?
True.
The biggest issue for this Utah team has just simply been tackling.
Yeah.
If they can get in there, if they can be in the right position and wrap up, I think this team is going to be okay. If they can get in there and they have less than 10 missed tackles a game, I don't think many people are going to be questioning this defense because I think they continue to step up. There's things that need to be improved, but every team has that. And I still think Utah's at a higher level than most teams, even hitting at its peak.
It's just crazy to talk about a Morgan Scalley, Kyle Whittingham defense having tackling issues. But they were. I mean, Josh, what were you thinking in the press box watching that 3rd and long, the first tech drive, and seeing all those missed tackles? What were you thinking?
I mean, it's crazy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's been years where this has happened for them before, and that year that they went down to Florida, that was really essentially why they lost
Oh,
that
gosh.
game, is because Anthony Richardson just put them on skates, right? And it wasn't just him; it was other guys as well. But I think you don't know what you have, and you don't know how well you have to do some of these things until you get it on tape, and so the more you get this on tape, now it's easier for Scally and Whittingham to be able to say, hey, this is where you have to go. If you're in this position, you're toast. If you're here, you have much better leverage, whatever that may be, right? And I think you're seeing incremental steps. I'm really fascinated to see how this bye week and then the week leading up to Arizona State work out for the defense and the offense. But I think if you can get a lot of that stuff kind of corrected, what does Utah do in the second half of the schedule? Are they going to be solid? Are they going to have their problems? I tend to lean on they're going to be okay, just simply because they've proven it over the years that whatever you were at the beginning of the season, by the end, they've generally picked it up. That's not to say they're perfect, but they've generally picked it up and they've put it all together.
You're right. And this is a defense that has, even when they have a down tackling performance, you mentioned Florida, overall, they had that. They would fix that throughout the season. And I feel like it is a group that will continue to get there. Tech's athletes are not like the rest of the conference, too. So in that regard, you're going to continue to see some lesser skill position. You're still going to see Baylor, Kansas, and Kansas State have some guys. You mentioned Levitt already. So still some tests there, and be interesting to see how this Utah team responds in those tests too. Just like it's fascinating to see how the Utah men's basketball season is going to play out. We're all football folks. We're less than months away from the start of the men's basketball season. How are the running Utes going to fare this fall? We're going to tell you in one moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IHSS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from the smooth handling to intuitive controls. With the all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. You can check out Mazda's inventory today. Today's show also brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it. Let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices, jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is genuinely what you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about college football games for less than $10. The app makes sure it's simple and easy. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love the zone deals too. Pick the section, Game Time picks a seat, you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download Game Time today. The running Utes are almost back, Josh. It's a roster with a ton of transfers. There is all the excitement over the Alex Jensen era getting underway, but the Big 12 is a gauntlet in college basketball. What are your year one expectations for this team? Because I honestly don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think nobody does, right? Even the coaching staff, and they've admitted it, right? Alex Jensen has come in and he says, "I don't know what I have," and there's different pieces, right? He can know what he has on his own roster, but not know how that compares to the rest of the league. I think the difference here is that Utah is trying very well to be versatile in what they do. They're going to be a smaller team, so they're not going to be a team that's coming in there with a lot of height. They're not going to be able to do a ton of post work in the traditional sense of inside out type stuff. This is going to be a much different game where Utah's smaller, and they have to take advantage of that. So you're going to see speed. You're going to see guys trying to get their open shots. Alex wouldn't quite say that it's a motion offense, but there's going to have some of those elements where you're going to be having to pass the ball around a ton. You're going to be putting a lot of emphasis on the guys that are on the court, and you want them to be playmakers, whether that's getting above the rim. And more than anything, this entire team can get above the rim. Like, this isn't one of those where, Utah's had a couple centers where they can kind of just lay it in and they're not really dunking it. This is a team from 1 to 5 on the positioning. They're going to get above the rim. And so there's going to be a lot of leaning into their athleticism, trying to push them, being able to use that small guard type mentality, trying to be able to go that way. But at the end of the day, it's still kind of a crapshoot. You've got a lot of talent. You've got a lot of athleticism. You've got what, Alex Jensen can say is the quote unquote running Utes, trying to get them to run. But at the same time, you don't know how that's going to compare with the rest of the league. And knowing how deep and talented the Big 12 is, it's a tall test, right? It's not going to be an easy task for this team. I think their non-conference schedule is good enough that they're going to get some early wins. They're playing a lot of quad 4, quad 3 games like many teams do. But then near the conference, start playing, you're going to start getting, quad 1, quad 2 type teams, a Mississippi State. You're going to get Washington. You're going to get Cal. You're going to get some of these teams in there to test you a little bit to kind of see where they're at. And so I think the way that they're doing it, there could always be a better non-conference schedule. But I think the way that they're doing it is they're kind of easing them in, see what this team is like, and then kind of going from there. And I'm really curious to see how Alex puts it together. He's approaching this very differently than a lot of coaches out there. He's obviously been in the he's coached at the collegiate level, but that's 10, 15 years prior. And so he is genuinely approaching this like an NBA style, where they're going to try to do different things that embrace that mentality, even in recruiting, that kind of stuff, to be able to see where they can get an edge and kind of how they attack it. So really fascinated to see what it is. But, if you were to ask me to pick how the season is going to go, my guess is going to be as good as anybody's, because there's just not really a clear benchmark here. That's not to say that they're mailing it in and saying, hey, we're going to be good next year. Alex Jensen wants to win, and he wants to win early. And he also recognizes that it's not going to be the easiest of tasks. And so, I think it's a realistic look at trying to improve while also trying to be competitive immediately.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, last year they were 8-12 in Big 12 play. There's a chance they're worse this year, for the simple fact of, in order to reach where you want to be, sometimes you got to tear it down, get worse for a year, and then you can really hit the ceiling. Maybe this team will be better. I obviously hope they are. Already a season-ending injury, unfortunately, with Faye, one of the Western Kentucky transfer, the center. He's going to be out. But I am excited to watch some of these other guys like Elijah Chopamore from Syracuse. You get Ja'Kai Howard coming over from Auburn. I know he's had some stuff in the past with some off-the-court stuff, but hopefully he can figure it out there. Terrence Brown, the transfer too. There's a ton of exciting individuals on this team, Josh. Are there a couple guys you're most looking forward to watching inside the Huntsman this year?
I mean, all of them, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to know. I mean, they did like an NBA style media day a couple weeks now ago, and I mean, it really hits you to understand like where this team's at, because they walk in and it's hard to remember who all these guys are, right? Like, you're learning an entirely new roster. And so, you read about them or you've seen them in their previous schools. And, I think there's excitement about what they can be, but how does that complement Utah? Where are they going to be? But I think the most exciting thing is just the athleticism of this team. I think, Ja'Kai Howard is a guy that can jump above the rim, basically. I mean, there's a lot of guys like that, maybe not as high as him, who just has unlimitless bounce. But I think it's stuff like that. I think if you can bring an exciting game of basketball to the Huntsman Center, people are going to be okay if you lose, right? Like, obviously everybody wants to win, but I think if you can bring an exciting game to the Huntsman Center or even on the road, Utah fans are going to buy in. And you have to make those steps year over year, but you've got to be able to make it fun. Part of the problem about where some of these teams have been in the past is basketball just simply hasn't been fun. Growing up, I've been a diehard basketball fan. Like, I've loved basketball. I understand it fairly well. I'm not perfect at it, but coming to some of those games over the last few years, and this dates back even to Larry Krystkowiak too, some of those games you leave that, I'm like, why am I here? This is awful basketball. But I think, there's a situation here where Utah may not be the best, and they may not have a guy that you can say, okay, you're going to be our number one guy that we turn to. I think they'll get there, but they might not have that. But at the same time, I think you're going to see a level of play that's exciting. And if you can get that, I think that's all that fans want to see.
I totally agree. And that's what I appreciate about you so much. You're a credentialed media member, but you're saying exactly what the fans are thinking. It was not fun and exciting to go and watch Utah basketball. At times, the ticket prices reflected that. The curtains were a thing for a reason. It's not just because you're losing, it's how you're losing. In some ways, the most important job that Coach Jensen has this year is to get people excited about this Utah men's basketball program. And we'll see if they can do it. Josh, please it's always a blast having you on. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can obviously catch me on Twitter at J4KSL. On Blue Sky, KSL.com. You can listen to my podcast as well. It's the Utah Checkdown. I mean, I'm a million places. TikTok, you can find me. I'm doing a million things. So happy to chat with anybody. And, if you can't find me, you're not looking hard enough.
Well, you have 1,000,001 things because you made time to come on here today. Josh, thank you so much. Have a good one, my friend.
Thanks. No problem.
That's going to do it for this Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow. One more day of this bye week. We're going to preview a little bit of ASU as we get ready for that matchup in a little less than a week and a half away on Locked On Utes.